Hello and welcome to another episode of The Closing Track, the official podcast of Another Ascending Lark, where music and the Christian worldview collide. And oh my gosh, I want that lightsaber. Like, no joke. I want that lightsaber, and I want it, like, now. Like, oh my gosh, I can't tell you how many times I have seen that trailer since it came out on Friday. Did you see it? Like, surely you've seen it.
Oh, yeah, man. I saw all the memes that went with it, or that people, they messed with the image of that lightsaber and they made it all funky looking.
Yeah.
Really funny.
I watched a trailer this morning. It was like the George Lucas special edition.
I heard about this one, yeah.
Dude, it's so funny. Like when this guy's lightsaber, like he lights out the lightsaber and the red one comes out and then the 2-1 comes out. And then one shoots out the other end like Darth Maul. And then another 2 shoot out the side. So there's 4 shooting out the side and 2 shooting out long ways. It's a 6-bladed lightsaber. And I was just like, that would be something George Lucas did.
Overkill.
Yeah, the whole trailer is like there's something in like every single square inch of the frame. And so it's so busy, but I'm like, wow, George Lucas isn't in charge of this anymore.
Yeah.
All is right with the world.
I saw the Lego parody of the. Did you see that one?
I didn't see the Lego.
The Lego,
one yet.
they did the whole trailer with Legos.
That doesn't surprise me.
It was so good. It was really good.
That doesn't surprise me. Like I guess I'm not surprised actually that there would be a Lego one. That would just seem natural. But it's amazing like how even on Friday, like the day it came out, like articles were appearing in like USA Today and other places, like dissecting the lightsaber, like going like nerd mode.
It's a hot commodity, man.
Yeah, it's a hot commodity, and it's probably the most like I've never seen a teaser trailer like get so much attention. Like I guess
it's Star Wars, man.
I guess
it's people are going to lose their mind when this movie comes out.
That's what people
Seriously.
did. That's what people did with episode 1.
There will be riots in the streets.
Oh my
when this movie comes out. That was not a reference to anything. Sorry, too soon.
My name is Austin. I am the head honcho of Another Ascending Lark. As we have referred to countless times on this episode, I will not be the next Jedi Knight. That will be the responsibility of Brett, who, as you can probably tell if you're a regular listener, that is not the voice of Brett. On the other hand, that is the voice of my good friend Aaron Reyes, who is joining us for this particular episode just because Brett was going to be out of town, and there was a topic where his expertise and wisdom is very much appreciated. So, Aaron, thanks for coming on, man.
Thank you for having me. I'm really, really excited.
Yeah, thanks for taking time out of your schedule, and especially thanks for all you've done, like cheering us on, and you've definitely been one of our biggest fans and biggest supporters. So thank you for all you've done. So. Well, I don't want to take like too much of the introduction for you. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Aaron, for those of you listening who don't know him.
Oh yeah, I am the director of worship at Redeemer Christian Church. Fairly new at it. I've been a member of the church for about 3 years, but I was an interim pastor at a church in Oklahoma. But Redeemer hired me on maybe 5 months ago.
Yeah, it was relatively recently, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was, and I was just thankful for the opportunity to do it. So I'm the director of worship at Redeemer Christian Church, and I'm also a student at Amarillo College.
Woo woo.
About to be, go Badgers.
Yeah, go Badgers.
Yeah, we don't have a team, so I just do this.
It's always so awkward, like whenever you're with WT students, and like they have the fight song and the logo and everything, and you're an AC student, you're just like,
yeah. We have like a stuffed badger. That's as far as we go.
We have Rocket the raccoon.
Yeah.
Except that it's not a raccoon. It's
but
a
I'm about to go to WT hopefully in one semester. So cross my fingers about all that. So.
WT's a great school. Like I'm a WT student now, so don't get me wrong. I am thankful that I'm able to go to WT, but I definitely miss AC.
It's such a great school.
It really is. It's such a blessing, and it's such a great school. But no, Aaron is going to be joining us today because we're going to be doing a show on a topic of worship. And since, as Aaron has said, that he is the worship leader of the church that Brett and I attend, I'd figured, we could talk about this in terms of theoretics, but it'd be nice to have someone who actually has to practically put these things into practice every Sunday morning, and the rubber has to meet the road. And so this will be a different-ish show today, with Brett not being here and just a couple of different other things. Brett will be back next week for whatever we decide to do next week. I have no idea yet. But this will be a slightly different show, and one of the ways it's going to be slightly different is that I would like Aaron to give us very briefly if he has his top 5 albums if you were to take on a desert island, just so that we got a little bit of a musical starting point for our guest host here today. So you're stranded on a desert island and you are given 5 albums to pick from. What 5 albums would those be?
My mom would be really mad at me if I didn't add a Barry Manilow CD on here, but I'm not gonna do that. So in no particular order, the top 5 albums that have influenced me the most as a musician, and it's just a fan of music, have been "There's Nothing Left to Lose" by the Foo Fighters.
Really?
That album came out in 1999, but I didn't get into it till about 2007, my senior year. It was like the anthem of my senior year.
I would not have pinned Foo Fighters on you.
Oh man, I'm a huge Foo Fighters fan.
Really?
Yeah, they were all I listened to there for a while. And "There's Nothing Left to Lose" is still my favorite album that they've come out with. And it's just, I don't know, for some reason, like "Ain't It the Life's" on there, "Breakout's" on. I mean, just so many great songs that have spoken to me.
Awesome.
So the Foo Fighters is on there. "The Animal Years" by Josh Ritter.
I'm not familiar with that one.
Okay, Josh Ritter, he's not a well-known artist, I guess.
I know who he is, but I'm not familiar with the album, I guess.
It's fantastic. "Girl in the War" is on there. Just a lot of great songs. I definitely, I know we're not doing recos yet, but I'd recommend that album for sure.
No, hey, we've done many recos throughout the show before, so fine with me.
"To Be Loved" by Thad Cockrell. It's one of my favorite worshipful albums. I wouldn't call it a worship album.
Yeah, that'd be hard.
Yeah, but it's fantastic.
I've heard songs from that album. It's a great album.
It's so good. "Damn the Torpedoes," Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers.
Okay, there we go.
And that Tom Petty, I discovered him at a young age, and just I can't speak enough about how much Tom Petty has influenced me as a musician.
Huh.
That's and "Cold Roses" by Ryan Adams. Cold Roses. Ryan Adams and the Cardinals.
Okay. Ryan Adams and the Cardinals. Okay.
Yeah, it's I love it so much. I mean, it's like if punk rock were to meet country music, but not like fast, not fast-paced punk rock, but like the rawness of punk rock meeting country music.
Okay.
I love how honest it is and how like even sloppy it even appears. There's something really real about that.
There's something about like sloppiness. It's like almost some genres value it maybe way too much, and then some genres value it like not at all. Like like you have some genres where like sloppiness is like, oh, this album wasn't sloppy enough. You're not authentic about it, whatever. And then you have some albums where it's like so like flawlessly produced that there's like no room for like the fact that this is a human creation anywhere in the album. Exactly.
Yeah.
So really, that's an interesting set for a top 5. I wasn't expecting you to drop some of those, but that makes sense. Like, that's a pretty good set for a top 5.
So yeah, and it's always growing, but these are the ones that I've always
like. If you were to be put on there like right now, like these would be the 5
exactly. And I mean, they're the ones that have stuck with me over the years, and that I still listen to on a weekly basis. Like, I'm listening to something from one of these artists,
all the
particularly
time.
One of these albums. So
all the time, I gotcha. Yeah, that's definitely a great top 5. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. If you want to contact us, you can find us on Facebook at Another Ascending Lark. You can follow us on Twitter at AALblog. You can send us an email at anotherascendinglark@gmail.com. And, of course, you can visit the website anotherascendinglark.com, where we have all of the links for every article that we talk about in the show. Plus, you can listen to the show online if that's another way for you to get a hold of the show if you want. So we have a bit of an interesting show this time. It's probably the most unique show we've ever done, just because it's the first guest show that we've ever done, and I'm really excited about it. But sadly, we have to get started on kind of a really sad note here. So we were going to talk about Prince, but then just this, like literally, I got home from church and was scrolling through Facebook, and I saw the most recent Scott Stapp articles that were coming out that he's about what he's trying to do, and I'm just like, okay, this just crossed the line. So I guess I'd like to rewind a little bit. Scott Stapp, if you know who that name is, you either love him or hate him. Most of you probably hate him. He is not doing well. Earlier in the week, there were articles coming out that he was saying that he was broke, living in a Holiday Inn, and under attack, to borrow his phrase. And he was putting out videos on Creed's Facebook page. And like when I first saw him, like I was like, dude, that's not him. Like he looks so bad. But and then a couple of days later, articles started surfacing that Scott Stapp's wife attempted to put him in psychiatric hold, and the cops even tried to do it at one point because they're finding rambling on the side of the road. And apparently, drugs and alcohol and everything that he shouldn't be messing with, he's messing with. Like the chuckle, but it's sad. Like
it is very sad.
Because he had an album come out in the Christian market last year. It was called Proof of Life. We covered it, and it was a mediocre album, but I mean he was trying like to get back in the scene, and it's obvious, he was like trying to make those steps, and then not even a year later, it seems like just it's all going downhill again. It's like he when he rises in the public circle, like he rises big, and then when he falls, it's always huge.
Two very extremes.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's so big, and what tipped the iceberg for me at least is like he has I don't know what the name of the crowdsourcing place that he's using, but he's trying to raise $480,000. Right? Yeah. No, is that right? $480,000. I believe that's right. I can't math today.
I can math never.
I can't math today.
Yeah.
Hi, puppy. For a new solo album and for a book. He wants to write a fiction book on the side, and apparently you have to raise $500,000 for that. And it's just like bad timing for one thing, but you don't need $500,000 to record an album.
Yeah, it's like that's pretty strange. I mean, it's amazing what you can get a Kickstarter for these days.
Like,
anything.
Did you hear about the potato salad Kickstarter?
I heard about this. Yeah, people were actually paying like loads of money for this potato salad.
Yeah, and it worked so well. Like people were. Yeah, I mean, it was a hugely successful Kickstarter, and it was over a potato salad. I
want to get a Kickstarter for something.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I had a friend who's trying to go through seminary right now. He's like, I have an Indiegogo campaign to help me pay for some of my seminary funds, and I can barely get 25% of my goal. But some jerk can have a Kickstarter campaign making potato salad and make millions of dollars doing so. I'm like, fallen world, man. Fallen world.
The questions that I have with the whole thing is like, okay, because I know in some Kickstarters you can, there are reward points or whatever that you can, like, what would be the rewards if I were to like fund Scott Stapp, like what, would it be like a Creed t-shirt from the 90s or a...
Oh my gosh, that would be funny. That would be so funny. Like Scott Stapp sing at your funeral or sing at your wedding. I mean, but no, it's really tragic because Scott Stapp. I mean, it's a well-known fact that Scott Stapp professes Christianity. Like he professes to believe the faith that we believe, and yet right now he is melting down in the public eye yet again. Like this isn't like an uncharacteristic thing for him. Like he's been down this road before and he's going down it again. Only this time he's asking for $500,000 in the process.
Wow.
I mean, that's what crossed the line for me, because I was like, okay, first of all, no one's going to buy that you need $500,000 for an album. And then like, he wants to write a fiction book. You're going to crowdsource money to write a book?
There's something going on, man.
It's drugs. Like I mean, some of these reports have indicated that there's been some drugs involved and some alcohol involved, and I mean, it's pretty obvious that there's drugs involved in this, which is so sad because he's said multiple times, he's done with that. He's walking away. He has Christ. He has Jesus, and that's good now. And then just to see him relapse into it, it's just heartbreaking.
Yeah, I mean, and it's just a humble reminder to me, who is, I mean, I'm a Christian, and what sin wants to do to us, it doesn't want to flirt with us.
It wants to destroy us.
It wants to destroy us.
And this is exactly what's happening right here. And it's a public spectacle for everybody to see. And I can't even imagine what his wife and kids are going through now. Like, I mean,
what no matter where you stand with Creed.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, that's the thing, is that this isn't about Creed. Like, I've been reading Facebook comments, and people were like, so hooked on the fact that he's Scott Stapp of Creed that they totally missed past the fact that here is a man, like, falling apart before your very eyes. Like Creed has nothing to do with this right now. Like Creed's not even in the picture. This is about Scott Stapp as a person, as a human being.
Yeah.
And it's so sad. Speaking of Creed, though, Mark Tremonti, the guitarist of Creed, has stated that he is trying to get in contact with Stapp to make him stop.
Stop the Kickstarter.
Yeah, just like, dude, like, stop. Like, you're not okay. You need to stop. And so far he hasn't been successful, but I mean, I give him credit for trying to get in touch with him and trying to get this to stop, because yeah, this is really sad. And I think especially the Christians who are either know of Stapp or fans of Stapp, like, this is a real big chance for you to pray for him, for one thing. Like, pray for him and pray for his family, because it's obvious the dude kind of needs it, just a little bit. And to watch the way that you speak about, like, someone going through such a public situation, like, because that could easily be me, that could easily be you, that could easily be any one of us. And what we would want others to do to us if we were in that position, we should do to Scott. And so whatever you, and don't give to the Kickstarter, like, don't give to the Kickstarter campaign. Like, whatever you do not give to that. That's no, like, until it can be verified that he's mentally and, not on drugs or alcohol is not in the picture, do not give, because you might very well and most likely are giving to his drug money. I mean, as sad as a statement as it is, you have to think about that at the moment. Like, these things have all happened in the span of like 4 days from each other.
Yeah, it's snowballing fast.
It is snowballing fast.
And this is just a really good reminder of, like, this is where Christian community can work so good. I really do pray that there's a group of friends and believers that can surround him and just kind of call him up.
Yeah, it'll be curious to see how the Christian market especially responds for this, because
it's really interesting.
Yeah, because Proof of Life was nominated for a Dove Award this past Dove Award cycle. I mean, the album that came out barely a year ago was nominated for Dove Awards this past cycle. I don't think it won anything. I don't remember it winning anything, but I mean, it was still nominated, and then just barely a year later, all this is starting to happen. So hopefully there are people in the Christian scene who are genuine Christians, and will come alongside Stapp and help him out, because yeah, you're right. This is where community is like super important right now, and it's obvious he doesn't have it at the moment if he's living in a Holiday Inn, which Holiday Inn, like, I mean, I guess there's worse places to be stuck at, but
if you're gonna have a meltdown anywhere, it might as well be the Holiday Inn.
I mean, I guess, but Holiday Inn is expensive. Like,
that's very true.
Like, how is he broke, but like living in a Holiday Inn? Because
I mean, at some point you gotta wonder, like, if you can walk into anywhere and be like, "Hey, I was the lead singer of Creed.
I am the lead singer of Creed."
That should at least get you a room at the Holiday Inn.
Bow down and worship me.
I will take you higher.
Oh my gosh. But that's really the only like bit of news. It was, Thanksgiving. It was a real slow news week, and so but it was a slow news week except for this. So yeah, hopefully this stops and we don't have to talk about this again. As far as albums go, I do want to say before I tackle one album this episode, I'm only gonna do one album, that if there's something we've missed from the year and you would like for us to cover it before the end of the year awards, please let us know yesterday, because I have at least 10 albums off the top of my head that I still have to review, and we have 4 weeks left in the year. So if there's something that we've missed, please tell us. Like don't hesitate to tell us. And we will try to get to it, but we can't make any promises. But if there's something that, like, I think this could be album of the year, I hate to break it to you, that's pretty much already been decided. There's a text message that I just got on my Mac. That totally interrupted my train of thought. Yeah, just get those recommendations to us as soon as we can. But today's album that I'm going to cover is Coldplay's Ghost Stories, which came out. It came out earlier in May. I'm not reviewing the live album that came out last week of the same name. This is the studio album, and this is an interesting review for me only because it's a very complicated review. I had a Coldplay phase when I was in high school. Like,
I think we all had a Coldplay phase.
I had a really long Coldplay phase though, like probably longer than most.
Let me rephrase that. We all had a yellow phase. That
See, I didn't have a yellow phase.
Really?
No, I didn't have a yellow phase. I had a Viva La Vida phase.
Oh man.
That was my phase. I didn't.
You know, a lot of people hated on that album, but I really like it.
That's my favorite. That is easily
It's
my
so
favorite.
good.
Oh, it is. It's easily my favorite Coldplay album, Viva La Vida. The one that followed that, Milo Xyloto. I don't know how that's how you pronounce it.
Yeah, he got a tattoo on that album, right, on his arm.
I think so. I mean, I'm sure he does, and I'm sure he knows how to the divine language to pronounce such a complicated word.
Oh, yeah, that's probably around the time he started dating Gwyneth Paltrow. So
That's right.
Going
That's
downhill from
right.
there. Yeah.
Well, okay. What's funny about some of these songs on Ghost Stories is that I mean, they're obviously it was a romantic theme flowing through some of these songs, and then I think it was like a month and a half ago that he broke up with Jennifer Lawrence, which I was just like, you're like 15 years older than her, man. Like that's just kind of weird.
Yeah.
But this is definitely an interesting follow-up from Milo Xyloto because they scaled it back quite a bit. It's nowhere near as grand, as out there as they don't really like try to capitalize on the sound of Milo Xyloto. If anything, they take a couple of steps backwards, sound-wise, and kind of move backwards and a little bit more introspective, a little bit more reflective. And so the album overall, with the exception of one song, is a really mellow record, which for Coldplay, that's been the norm up all this time. You know, even like Parachutes era Coldplay and then A Rush of Blood to the Head, you know, most of their stuff on there was pretty tame, pretty mild, and pretty mellow. And then Milo Xyloto comes out and it's like parties everywhere. Like, oh my gosh, it was crazy. But Ghost Stories, like, it's very reflective. It's very like interlooking, which makes sense given what Chris Martin has said about the album, which I think you'll find this fascinating, Aaron. To Martin, Ghost Stories represents a journey about unconditional love, and that's what he described in the televised special on the album. And then he goes on in another quote. The idea of Ghost Stories for me was, how do you let the things that happened to you in the past, your ghosts, how do you let them affect your present and your future? Because there was a time when I was feeling like they were going to drag me down and ruin my life and the lives of those around me. I was very lucky to meet a very good Sufi teacher who started to introduce the idea of, if you sit with your experiences and find, and the things you've been through, they alchemize. I don't know what exactly that expression means, but anyway, to continue.
Very interesting.
Yeah, to continue. At the time he said that, I didn't really know what that meant, but I trusted that it would work. And the more that I was learning about that, the more music just started flowing through. So it's fascinating because he's like, Chris Martin has never been an unreligious person. Like, he's always woven religious themes into some of his songs, and he's openly said that he believes in a God, and yet he says that this is a journey of learning about unconditional love, and yet the dude lands in just the wrong place. Like,
Man,
it's like, no, man, like, you're not, like, you're looking for Jesus, and like, there's a reason why you wanted to do an album about this. There's a reason why you're asking these questions, like, how do we not let our past affect our present and our future? And that answer's found in Jesus, not in whatever you found and quoted, because it doesn't make an ounce of sense. If you sit with your experiences and the things you've been through, they alchemize. What the heck does that even mean?
I don't even know what that means. No, that's what's super weird.
Yeah, like, what the heck does that even mean?
But, you know, it just goes to tell you, like, from the Christian worldview, we believe, you know, that God has placed eternity inside of our hearts.
Yes.
And that the entire creation tells of a story of the wonders of God, and the special revelation apart from that is Christ, is Jesus, and the story of him rescuing us from our sins.
Yeah.
And it's so weird because so many people are grasping at straws, but the thing is, like, they're searching
and they land up at the wrong place.
They're landing in the wrong place.
And so it's interesting knowing that, like, listening to the album, because there are some moments where that theme definitely runs in pretty well, and then there are some other parts where it's more just romance per se than anything else. It's only 9 songs long, but it does have a 43-ish minute runtime, so it's one track short than most full lengths are, but it's not short on time. Yeah, and like I said, for the most part, this is a very mellow album. The only song on here that has any energy of any kind is A Sky Full of Stars, and that's a radio single they've been pumping out for some time now. It's Coldplay's foray into the EDM scene, the electronic dance scene. Really catchy song, has a lot of oomph, has a lot of emotion to it, and it's definitely when you get to that point in the album where A Sky Full of Stars comes on, like it's a great climax. Like it builds up to it, and when it gets there, it's awesome. But you really have to you have to wade through a lot of stuff that I guess it almost feels a little too stripped back. Like they kind of pulled back maybe a little too hard. Magic, the second track, excuse me, is the radio single that they first pumped out. I remember being in the FM 90 studios here at AC when we got Magic in, and we started priming that up and playing it. And I remember talking that up all the time, and I was super excited because it's a great song. It's an outstanding ballad. It's got a U2 guitar riff, like literally a U2 guitar riff. You get to the end of the track and there's this super delay heavy riff that comes on. I'm like, oh hey, that's the riff from Sometimes You Can't Make It on Your Own. Like I know that riff anywhere because it's like my favorite U2 song ever. And then there's a lot of atmospheric synths involved with the album, so it plays well with the fact that these songs are slower, that they create some real beautiful soundscapes, but overall it just does not feel in some places it feels directionless, and in some places it also feels really kind of uninspired. Not that they're not working from there, but the end result just kind of comes off they don't really know where they're going, sort of, which is disappointing because it's an interesting choice to follow up such an energetic prior album with something that goes in the opposite direction and probably goes a little too far in the opposite direction. It feels at home. Like if you are familiar with Coldplay's early day stuff, like this will feel right at home with you. Like there's nothing really about this album that's unfamiliar in any way, shape, or form, which I think is another part of the problem, is that with the exception of maybe the EDM drive of A Sky Full of Stars, there's really nothing here on this album that they haven't done before. Even the guitar work on this album feels a little bit familiar and stale in certain places, and compares quite a bit with some of their other work, especially like the first track, Always in My Head. The guitar work in that is very familiar to Hurts Like Heaven from Milo Zaloto, and so it's definitely not my favorite Coldplay album. It's not a bad album by any means, but it's definitely a little bit underwhelming of a release. So if I were to pin it, this is where it always comes down to. If I were to pin it, I would probably pin it at about a 6.5, because there's Magic and there's A Sky Full of Stars, and then not that the other songs in the album are bad, but I don't really care to listen to them, I guess. Like,
especially if it's the same thing like rehashed.
It's not necessarily. Oh, that's the thing, is that it's not necessarily the same thing rehashed in the strictest sense, but it doesn't feel like it's not either. I mean, it's a very like the critic spectrum for this album has been really wide range, and it's been interesting because it's gotten some real mixed reviews on one end and then some real glowing positive reviews on the other. And so there's not a real clear consensus on this album, and I can understand why. I'm full agreement with the fact that it's a interesting album. So even though I pinned it at a 6.5, I'm open to my understanding of this particular album being wrong. I mean, it's an interesting album just because of like the prior concept that we talked about, and some of the songwriting choices in here reflect that. But musically, I would much rather just go listen to Viva La Vida or X and Y. Like,
yeah,
I would just much rather go listen to those because, like, I don't know about you, but Viva La Vida, like, that album was like my senior year of high school. Like, oh my gosh.
There's so many great songs on that album.
Oh, there was. And the guitar work had a fresh direction for the time, and a real strong vision that it was going after. And then it got even stronger of a vision and direction in Milo Zaloto. And then, like, honestly, when I'm listening to this album, the guitar work is totally forgettable in certain places. The synth work is really well done throughout the album. And they do create some really, really cool sounding synthscapes, but yeah, this is just not the best. This is just not the best thing they've ever done, but it could be worse, I guess. So 6.5 for Coldplay's Ghost Stories. And like I said earlier, if you are wanting us to cover something, you need to tell us. You need to tell us now because, oh my gosh, like figuring out how we're going to end this month with, holidays and out of town and traveling. We need to know, people. If there's something you want to hear from us, you better tell us now.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Oh my gosh.
Dog. You can hear it coming from a mile away.
Hi, puppy. Yeah, thanks for letting us do this at your house, by the way. Definitely thanks for letting us do this today's show at your house. It's definitely a nice change of pace from doing it in my crammed apartment room. You're on campus here at AC, and I bet you have some real interesting stories for the fact that your house is like literally on the campus of AC.
It is it's a nightmare to get out past noon.
Oh my gosh, I can't even imagine.
It's ridiculous.
Like, I can't even imagine. And like this house is like connected to like one of the ministries here on campus, isn't it?
Bible Chair of the Southwest.
Yeah, Bible Chair of the Southwest. I bet you've had because of the fact that your house is like connected to a ministry, even though you lived here, I bet you've had some real interesting stories about like just from living here.
Yeah. Yes, we have. Well, are you referencing that?
I'm referencing that, yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I just found this out. My roommate just told me about this. I had no idea. So there was our landlord so happens to be a professor here at the college, and he's been he's been a great source for discipleship.
He was he was one of the first professors I ever had here at college ever. Like he's such an awesome dude.
And we're a part of Amarillo Reformed. What's the last
Fellowship?
Letter? Fellowship.
Yeah,
that's right.
Because it spells ARF.
ARF.
And someone makes the joke about how Calvinists can never make good acronyms.
That's probably true. Well, so there was one of my most influential theologians that I've read, and my roommates had classes with him. His name is Greg Beale.
Ah, yes, Greg Beale.
John brought him in for ARF
to
give a few lectures on eschatology.
And it was so good.
It was just fantastic.
It was awesome.
And I had no idea, but like the day that he gave this pastoral lunch before one of his night sessions, he actually like came over to the house, and my roommate was in the backyard, and I was gone. I think I was doing wedding stuff, and it's just so like one of my favorite theologians that I've read and has influenced me stepped inside my house, and
you weren't here.
I wasn't here for it, yeah, and we wasn't expecting it. And the fact that like the house was a mess is kind of embarrassing, but oh man, I had no idea that this happened until today.
That's so funny. Yeah, I remember just going because I went and saw him too when he came and spoke, and he seemed like a real nice dude.
Mm-hmm.
He seemed like a real cool guy. And then I bought like all the books that he was selling. I dropped like close to $100 in books that night. I did just finish reading one of them, The Erosion of Inerrancy and Evangelicalism. And
I haven't got to that one yet. So I'm reading.
It was not bad. I mean, it's definitely a worthwhile read, but it didn't hit the target as well as I was hoping it would, I guess. Like, I don't think it hit the target as well as I wanted to, but I am going to go through that behemoth.
The biblical New Testament theology?
Yeah, biblical New Testament theology. I'm going to go through that.
He's a beast.
I'm going to go through that starting next year. So
after we finish Calvin.
Yeah, Aaron and I, we meet every Tuesday morning at Palace Coffee in Amarillo, which, just as a shameless plug, they did just recently win the best coffee house in the nation.
They did, yeah.
A couple weeks ago. So if you think Amarillo, Texas has nothing to offer, we have the best coffee house in the nation. So come at us.
Bring it.
Bring it.
Come and take it.
And we're going through Calvin's Institutes right now, and it's been so mind racking, but
it's been really good. I've been reading Calvin right next to Bavinck, Herman Bavinck.
That's got to be disorienting.
It's my on top of the classes I've been taking this semester, so my head is like about to explode.
So. Oh my gosh, I bet. Well, all right. Well, let's get into our main course here. I do want to temporarily get somewhat serious and say that the opinions that are reflected in this particular episode of The Closing Track do not necessarily reflect the stances or opinions of Redeemer Christian Church in Amarillo, Texas, nor of the Acts 29 Network or anything else connected with it in which we might get in trouble for some of the things we might say on this episode or this podcast, or you can fill in the blank.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, this is Aaron speaking on behalf of Aaron. He is not speaking on behalf of Redeemer Christian Church, the church that we both attend. He's speaking for himself. He's going to be using his experience at the church, but he's not speaking in the place of the church, and he's not their official spokesperson on this matter or anything. So, just to get that out of the way,
it's very wise. I wouldn't have thought of that.
Just want to cover your butt there.
Thanks.
So the topic we're going to cover today sort of came up when we reviewed Chris Tomlin and King's Kaleidoscope's album back a few weeks ago, which, temporary plug, if you still haven't listened to King's Kaleidoscope's newest album, shame on you. It is an outstanding album. You need to get it. You need to listen to it. That includes you, Aaron.
I've actually taken a listen to it. It's really good. It's really good.
It's really good. Tomlin's album, I critiqued, had no real artistic value, but it was primed for like instant congregational use. Like you could immediately like get these songs on a Sunday morning rotation, and they'd be easy to adapt and easy to get going. Yeah. But King's Kaleidoscope's album, on the other hand, was artistically outstanding, but there's no way you could get some of those songs in Sunday morning service. Not that they're like super.
Not at our church.
Well, even they're just so artistically demanding, I guess you could say. Like they go so intense into it that replicating them well in a Sunday morning service would be a little bit challenging. I mean, that's one way I guess you could put it. And so when it comes to worship, like how do we go about finding that balance between artistic expression and congregational accessibility? Does one have priority over the other? What happens when one is overemphasized over the other? These are just questions that I started thinking about when I reviewed those two albums back to back. I was like, how does this work out? And so I was like, well, that's a topic for a show. I'm always in need of those. So I'll just file that away. And I was like, wait a minute. Aaron's a big fan of the show, and Aaron's a worship leader. I bet Aaron has a lot to say on this. So it's a win-win for everybody. Yeah. So Aaron has to deal with this issue every week. And so that's why I've asked him to come on and help him share his insight into this. Because you have to Brett and I could theoretically go through this, but we don't actually have to make choices based on those reflections. You do. You're in charge of setting the worship for an entire church. Yeah. So you have to think about this. And so we're not going to, we're going to try to zone in on this particular element of worship as far as the musical aspect of Sunday morning worship. We're not going to try to give a systematic survey of worship in the Old Testament or the New Testament, or how the new uses the old or the old and the new, or this is going to be a real specific topic. And so we're going to be relying on some presuppositions that we may not necessarily state, but we might go back to if we need to clarify a few things. And so if you're looking for the episode where we go through what is biblical worship, this isn't necessarily the episode for you. We're definitely going to do that at some point in time down the road, and I'm sure I'll ask Aaron to come back on and maybe help us with that as well. But this is not that episode. This is an artistic look at an artistic issue within Sunday morning church worship services. Again, Aaron, thank you so much for being willing to come on and do this. Your insight's going to be super helpful to talk about this.
Well, maybe.
No. I think knowing you, I know you've had to think about this.
Yeah. It is a constant. It's a constant thing that I wrestle with. Not wrestle with. It's a bad word, but I'm thinking through on a week-to-week basis.
Well, yeah, and then you also have, we have a real strong core of musicians at Redeemer.
We've been blessed with so many great musicians.
Oh, yeah, we have some real incredible...
You counted them. You're included.
Dude, no, not me. You haven't seen me play guitar, so...
I've heard good things, though.
From who?
Ramona.
Ramona hasn't seen me play guitar. You sure as heck haven't heard good things about my guitar from Brett. Anyway, so I guess we might as well start, because we're talking, I guess, sort of about style. We might as well address the big one. Is there a style of music called worship?
Man.
My answer is no. My answer is that no, that's ridiculous. There's not. But say you. What do you mean? What's your thought on that?
Is worship a style of music? I think culturally, it depends. It depends who's defining that for you.
Okay.
Really, I would agree with you. I don't think so, but to a common everyday evangelical, I think the answer would be yes.
Yes, and that's the thing is that socially there is a thing like worship music, and then usually when we say that we think of Chris Tomlin, we think of
Matt Redman.
Yeah, Matt Redman and the Passion guys and and
Hillsong, all those guys.
Yeah, oh gosh, especially Hillsong. and all those other things. And then depending on who you ask, you might get answers like John Mark McMillan, Andrew Peterson, the Ember Days. I was totally blanking out on there. I was like, the Ember Days. I have to mention the Ember Days. Have you listened to the Ember Days?
I haven't, no.
Oh, dude. I'll get you that album before I leave today. Like, it's a free album, so I'm not going to give Aaron an album that he should otherwise go and buy. It's a free album in case you copyright hounds want to come after me. That's a great album. But yeah, it's like, because we're talking about like, we're going to be touching on like style. Like, is worship even a style? And I don't think like, I think if you're like looking at the approach to music in the terms solely of it fitting a square, narrow box in terms of style, that you're kind of, you might be reaching the right destination, but you're going the wrong way to get there, so to speak. Like, kind of like we talked about last week in the Christian music episode. It's so much easier to say, don't listen to secular music, just listen to Christian music. And maybe someone might go and listen to good music based on that advice. But there's better ways to get to that conclusion, and more thoughtful, more reflective, more, I guess, deeper ways to really think about how to go about getting to that destination, so to speak, when it comes to worship. But you lead, you do 5 songs. Yeah, five songs every Sunday morning. Kind of tell us, and tell me, I guess, what's your process like each week in going through like the getting a set list ready for a Sunday? Like, what's your process on that?
It is, and a lot of people would say like, well, what do? You just like
you stand up there and play guitar.
Yeah. There's a lot more that goes into it, and it's really what I'm fascinating. I'm passionate about it. I'm really passionate about it. So I kind of have a personal kind of a thesis for our ministry, for the worship ministry, which is we exist to glorify God through gathering with the saints week in and week out, so people can come and hear the gospel and proclaim the gospel as we are being sent into the city. Okay. And with that, like what I'm trying to do each week with building sets is I'm looking at the liturgical year that we're in. So right now we're in Advent. Right. And
it makes it easier for you.
Yeah, and really fun. But my job is to tell the story of the gospel. So whether you know it or not, at our church that we attend, and I'm going to use this word, and I hope it's like.
I don't have a censor button.
Okay. No, it's not a cuss word. I wasn't about to cuss on your podcast.
That's right.
That's Griffin. But so I've personally been convicted by and influenced really by just how we do a worship. I've been working at churches for a long time now. Right. I've noticed that there is a set liturgy to each service. So no matter what church you go to, each church, we could use that word, has a certain order of service or like liturgical aspect to it.
Right. Even if they like deny that they hold any kind of liturgy, the fact that they've got some set plan out of approaching
that's a liturgy.
Yeah, that's a liturgy. Like it's not
a form of worship.
It's a form of worship, right?
So, and so if you've come to our, I can say Redeemer, right? Yes. If you've come to Redeemer, you notice that a bulk of our worship is at the back half of the service, and the preaching is usually at the beginning. And what we're really doing, not just with our worship set, but with the entire service, is we are trying to tell the story of the gospel, right? With not just with the proclamation of the word, but with confession, with communion, and with responsive worship. And my kind of grid lines, like you said earlier when we were talking before the podcast, you said like the gutters that we don't want to follow. We want guidelines. Mm-hmm. And mine have always been the Bible, for one.
Wow,
which
really?
Yes. And really, I mean, it's laughable, but it's amazing how many.
It's so sad, like
it's
how
sad.
that you even have to like mention that.
Yes.
Like it's so sad that you even have to like say, one of the things we take seriously in worship is the Bible, because you have some places where they might give lip service to that, but they don't.
Yes, it's sad.
Yeah, I mean,
it's very sad.
At the camp that must not be named, I had to come into that pretty regularly. So sorry.
But and all this, I want to make a disclaimer here. A lot of this stuff, I've been blessed with a lot of very, very good mentors and guys who have discipled me, and that I've got to sit under, who have just been light years ahead of their time and have been very patient with me as a leader. Mm-hmm. and I've also done some extensive reading on this since, I am a worship leader, so why not read about it?
Right.
So this is, and I've taken this kind of border from Bob Coughlin. I don't know if anybody knows who that is, but
Bob Coughlin
fantastic
is
guy,
wonderful.
Sovereign Grace guy. And I take this from him, and I adopt it as ours at Redeemer. Is this worship is God focused? That is, God is clearly seen. Worship is God centered. God is clearly the priority, and worship is God exalting. God is clearly honored.
Okay.
So I don't know if you caught any of that, but there's a repetition there.
There is a yeah. It's God.
It's God. Yes, that God is at the center of our worship, and everything that we do, from our preaching to our worship, to everything that we do at our church, it's going to be focused and centered around the gospel.
Right.
And about God. And if we steer from that, then we can get into something really goofy, off the rails. And I don't want to bash anybody else, but
no.
This is what we, that I feel personally. I know I'm not speaking on behalf of Redeemer, but this is what I feel personally, that the Lord has been giving me in the ministry, that to serve Him in this way.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And yeah, like you said, like we're not trying to, we're not targeting anybody. Like we don't have anybody specifically in mind if we say anything negative, just because we are both members of the same church. We're not referencing any church that neither of us are aware of. We're just talking about general things that exist. No specific church is in our mind. In any of these other things we say. But okay, go back to the Bob Coughlin quote real quick.
Yeah.
What was the first one the first point that he made? The first God one?
Worship is God focused.
Okay, so God focused. Because I serve in the sound booth for Redeemer. I'm one of Redeemer's sound techs, and do other stuff with the media aspect of Sunday morning services. And the deacon who manages all of that, and we're just name dropping everybody today, aren't we?
We are, yeah.
His philosophy for my end of the sanctuary is that we are to glorify Christ, and we are to exalt Christ and make ourselves fade into the background. Like we're not to draw attention to ourselves.
We must increase. We must.
Yes. From John, from the book of John. Making God like focused, like making God known and focused on. At what point musically? So that's the standard, right? That's the goal.
That's the goal.
What does that look like musically? Like how do you go about that musically?
Yes. Does it have to sound like K1 or K-Love? K1. What is that?
Air One.
Air One.
If the two ever merge together.
Yes.
God, oh my gosh! If that
had
ever
a love
happened.
child, yeah. And here's the thing that we got to realize too. Like from my coming from a leader, before I'm a worship leader, I'm a servant. Mm-hmm. And I serve in a multi-generational church where we don't just have people in our generation there. We have people in every generation. That's what's so unique about
it's a blessing.
Situation.
It's such a blessing.
And the thing is, like, we can't take any credit for it. God is just God has moved, and He's not just at Redeemer, but in a lot of churches in Amarillo, really great churches. The Spirit is moving, and people are coming to know Christ, and praise God, by the grace of God, we happen to be a part of that. And so we have children, lots of children in our church, like young toddlers, and then we have
the Redeemer faithful are being fruitful and multiplying.
Yes, very much so. So we have a lot of young marrieds, we have a lot of singles, we have a lot of empty nesters, and we have a lot of senior adults.
And that's a broad audience.
Man, that's a huge range. Yeah,
it's such a huge range to like take into account.
Yeah.
Gosh, I can't even imagine.
So I would love, and I'm all for artistic expression in worship. I want that with the right focus.
Right, with the right focus.
But I got to realize too, like a lot of this, sometimes I have to play songs. I don't have to. Sometimes I get to play songs that some of our senior adults grew up listening to, and that really that stirred their heart towards the gospel.
Yeah.
And there are some songs that our empty nesters grew up listening to, and there are songs that we are growing up listening to, that all that are all God centered, God focused, and God exalting. That's my biggest thing, like content over style.
the lyrical content. Like,
what are we singing?
yes, what are we singing? Because
are we singing about, rubbing God's beard and, all about us and God blessing us? Am I the center of worship, or is God the center of worship?
And some songs that are passed off for worship in the worship market at the moment fall into some of those latter categories where they might come off as being worship songs, but when you examine some of the lyrics, it's God's not the focus of it. Like, God's not the center of it.
Yeah.
And so, okay, like that's like the best starting point though, and probably the last finishing point too. Like content.
Yeah. And not to say that we're going to pigeonhole the other side and go like, well, music doesn't matter because content is all that matters. Which is another gutter that we can fall into.
Which
right?
is the other gutter we can fall into,
Yeah.
because you have let's name drop Gungor. Because Gungor, you have, I don't deny, and I haven't denied in any of these episodes, that despite their present theological leanings, I'm still a Gungor fan, and I can't deny the impact they've had on me musically. And over the years, their music has been such a huge blessing to me, and like their approach to the artistic, like the music part of their worship, has made such an impact on me. But then when you go and you look at the content of some of their songs, sometimes it's lacking. They've moved too close to the artistic gutter, so to speak, and there's nothing like content-wise pulling it the other way, keeping it down like the bowling lane, so to speak.
Yeah. And again, I think we need to reemphasize too. We are talking about a worship, when the saints gather together to worship God. We're talking about that context. I'm not talking about like when you get in your car and you pump some Taylor Swift or whatever you want to listen to. I'm not saying like, because I really do think Christians have got it wrong historically. There was, whenever I was growing up, Christianity treated secular culture. Mm-hmm. We just kind of avoided it, or we there were mass CD burnings of AC/DC. We were told that if you listen to anything other than Christian music, then you're in sin.
Yeah, we talked about that in the last episode.
And I really do think like how we've grown from that is Christian culture has, instead of neglecting secular culture, what we've done is we've tried to copy it.
Yeah, we've imitated it.
We've imitated it, and in so doing, we've lost our whole idea. Like we are literally on the waves of culture.
Yes.
We're 10 steps behind it.
We're thrown back and forth by the waves of the culture, to borrow that phrase.
And that's a great point. That James K. Smith, who's a really great influential author of mine that I've read, has said this along these lines. He goes, "Many don't want a religious version where they can already get at the mall. They are looking for elements of transcendence and challenge that MTV could never give them. Rather than an MTV-ized version of the gospel, they are searching for the mysterious practices of an ancient gospel."
Dang.
Which that's James K. Smith for you.
Dang.
So what culture's done is it's just copied secular culture and go, look, we're cool too. Like Tim Tebow's a Christian,
You see my Christian T-shirt? It's the same logo as your shirt.
We're cool too. Become a Christian, and I think we've dropped the ball on that.
Oh yes.
But thankfully, God is sovereign, and
we don't play that as like a justifying card. We play that as like a thank goodness card.
Thank God
yes.
that he's in control.
Yes, because if we were in charge, well, we're just screwed. But okay, going back to just the Sunday morning thing. I maybe got a little bit off track there. Okay, so you've decided on a song based on the content.
Yes.
You've decided on a song based on the content. How do you go about doing an arrangement where you are not... You're not putting an emphasis on the musical talents of the musicians, but at the same time, you're not totally neglecting them to where, an infant could pick up a guitar and start strumming it.
Yeah, that's a great question, man. And that's one that I ask myself every week. Like, yes, content, all the way content. But at the same time, like, as a servant, which is what I am, I'm trying to serve our congregation. I would not be loving our people if we played weird, crazy renditions of songs that no one can sing to.
Right.
Like that would not be. I would not be loving our congregation.
Which is why I mentioned early on, like that King's Kaleidoscope album. Like some of those songs, the congregation would not be able to sing to. It's not because they're not capable of singing along, but they're just not easy to sing along to.
Yeah. And here's what I tell our musicians, because I'm trying to push the envelope for creativity, for like letting songs like Oh, sorry. Was that you?
That was my phone.
Okay, that's right. But so what I tell our musicians every week is like, look, we don't want to play what's being like exactly on the recording.
Okay.
Like here's a good example. Here's a good example. Like I'll do Matt Redman's "Better Is One Day."
Okay. Yeah.
Like, I love that song. It's a great old song.
Classic
song. It was great. It was big in the 90s.
Yes, it was. Oh my gosh.
And it doesn't necessarily have to sound like Matt Redman.
Right.
We can add elements. Like I think I played like a lap steel to that song.
Was that the song you played the lap steel?
I think I think so. And the whole point behind that was like,
yes,
and what I tell our musicians every week is, look, be creative, don't be distractive.
Okay, yes. And okay, so on that note of being creative and don't being distractive, like let's just take a guitar solo for example. Like
okay.
I know we don't really do much guitar solos in the way of Sunday morning services because they tend to fall in the latter category. But at what point or what guideline does a musician go from expressing, using their talents creatively, for the lack of a better word, versus being a distraction? Like at what point does that line cross? Like if someone's playing a guitar solo where the guitar solo is too distracting, but it's a really good guitar solo, like.
Yeah. Okay. So here's I've actually had this conversation with lots of friends and actually some other acquaintances who I wouldn't really call friends, but, who would say that we're not reformed enough or we're too reformed or whatever.
Because we don't hold to the regulative principle.
Because I won't go there.
That's for another episode.
But so we've had comments not just on our music but on like aesthetics, on lights and stuff like that. So what I'm trying to say here is, when it comes to that kind of stuff, when it comes to guitar solos and stuff, I don't want to be like Aaron's anti-guitar solos.
No, because you're not. No, you're not.
But here's the thing, like just like anything, why we have anything in our services is we want it to lead us. We want it to support us and direct us towards the gospel. We don't want it to distract us from the gospel.
Right.
So here's the thing, like in the right context, now I haven't seen this done rightly, but I'm not saying that it can't exist.
Yes, definitely.
When it comes to, being creative or guitar solos or
piano solos.
Piano solos,
like it can be anything.
It really can be anything. My biggest thing is, okay, what is this saying? Is this helping us lead us towards the gospel, or is it distracting us from getting there? Who's really getting the glory here? Okay. That's what I'm trying to say. And I really do think there's a context where that can work. Like there was a prayer service that we had not too long ago where literally we had light, creative music in the back as the elders were praying for the church.
Mm-hmm. I remember that.
And I have some friends who would like nail me to a cross because of that. Like you should never have music in while there's prayer. Right. And then I have some other acquaintances who'd be like, your music's dumb. Like you could be way better by adding four synths in here in the fog machine. And 4 synths. That
Who needs 4 synths?
I don't know. Again, I'm not trying to bash anybody, but here's okay, is it leading us towards the gospel?
Right. No, I get the vibe you're going on.
If it's creative, be creative. Don't be distractive.
Okay. So, how then do you budget creativity for maybe those moments where like a guitar solo would fit and would make sense? Maybe it's in the bridge of a song, or a drum solo, maybe a modified drum roll in the closing chorus of a song. Do you maybe budget those things based on like its appropriateness in the song? Like if it's if a song were to open up with like a real big guitar solo, like that's obviously out of place.
We had one today.
Yeah, you did. You sure did. I don't know how that slipped my mind. You sure did. But how do you go about like leading musicians in not crossing that line?
Yeah, that's a great question, man. That's a really good question. Because we have musicians who could literally who could solo on their instrument for hours.
Yeah, and that wouldn't be a bad thing. It would be an awesome thing.
It would be a really cool thing, yeah.
But for the worship context, it's inappropriate.
We would never let John Rubin do a 20-minute drum solo. He would never do that in a million years. But still, it's just so funny. I remember a YouTube video that I just saw where they were doing Oceans.
Oh my gosh, I've seen that video.
And literally, it was like in the middle of the song, and the guy just went, bah! He just
was
the
worst drum solo I've ever seen.
It was hilarious.
It was so terribly bad.
So what to help get that to help not get there is what I'm trying to say is I tell our musicians to listen to one another. Like, hey, like piano player, listen to what the bass player is doing. Drummer, listen to what the bassist is doing. Like listen to each other and don't cover what the other person's doing, because we are literally one.
You're not a bunch
sound.
of individual musicians like playing. You're a team.
We're a team of musicians glorifying God.
Which that perspective I think is really helpful, because at least growing up in churches for me, and even still just a lot of churches in general, being on the worship team can lead to some ego trips. Like,
oh man,
like it can definitely lead to some ego trips. And I think like the whole like listen to what the other people are doing and like compliment them and don't like try to overstep them. Like literally the opposite is true in a lot of churches, where and as a guitarist, I gotta admit, electric guitarists, we're bad at this.
It's easy to get carried away.
It's easy for us to get carried away. But it's like, instead of like taking the spotlight for yourself, you're, if anything, like allowing the spotlight maybe to go towards someone else instead of your music, and on someone else's musical part instead of yours, which helps everybody out because you're serving each other as you're playing.
Yes.
In a sense.
Yes. And what I really, because a big part of my ministry also is raising up leaders.
Yes.
And my prayer for that is we got tons of leaders who are more than willing and ready to lead. And I hope they become light years ahead of where I'm at, and which they will be.
Yes.
Which they will be. But it starts with the heart. It starts with our hearts. And we constantly are asking the question, okay, because we constantly have to check our heart.
Yeah, definitely.
Constantly. And ask ourselves, okay, why are we doing this?
Right.
We are doing this to glorify God, and we are doing this to make the name of Jesus famous, to edify the saints, and to save those who are yet to be saved. And it's an interesting thing that I'm learning week to week, but it's kind of like throwing mud at a wall and seeing what sticks,
So what would you say then maybe to your worship leaders who maybe are younger than you, who don't have maybe the experience that you have, or are in different circumstances that you would have? How would you, like, would you say anything, or what would you say to them who are trying to not fall into either gutter, where it's it's content driven, but musically, like there's nothing there, versus the other end where it's all music but no content. What would you say to someone who's maybe trying to balance that, or take both of those into appropriate consideration?
Yeah, that's a really great question. What I try to push with our musicians is I try to get them to be just fans of music. Just listen to music, like listen to different kinds of music. Branch out from what you're normally accustomed to.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna steal a quote from Tim Keller, because who doesn't do that?
Yeah, we did. Our number one episode at the moment isn't related to Tim Keller at all.
Well, Tim Keller said whenever he was talking about preaching or writing, he was saying if you spend your entire lifetime and you listen or you read one author, you're just a copycat of that one author. But if you listen to two authors, you become confused. And then he said, if you continue to go down that path, you listen to 10, you start to gain some momentum. But if you listen to 300 authors or 300 writers or whatever, you begin to develop your own voice.
Ooh, that's very good.
And I've always thought that was really profound. It always stuck with me. Like with musicians, like I want musicians who are fans of music. Who are playing music.
And that's not an unrealistic standard to hold, because, I mean, for crying out loud, you're going to be playing music on Sunday mornings. You have to love what you do.
And I know, like, a lot of our musicians have full-time jobs, and they are fathers, and they are mothers, and not everyone is going to be able to sacrifice 8 hours a day to listening and playing music. I know that.
Right.
But I want them in some aspect to be excited about playing music. And so that I would say, be a fan of music. All sorts of music. Stretch your goals, stretch your limits, and also be in community and be reading your Bible.
Those aren't bad points.
Like literally, it's the simplest things that make the biggest impact.
I think. And it really does, and that's especially like in modern evangelicalism, where like we're always looking for like the new fix or the new like mini theological or orthodoxical trend, like to do or to practice or whatever. Like. Yeah. Sometimes we just gotta go back to the basics.
We do. I mean, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel here. I mean, there's literally nothing new under the sun.
No, there's not.
There's nothing new under the sun.
And this isn't an issue that I don't think is necessarily new to our time either. Like, I'm pretty sure that this has been something that churches had to deal with all throughout its existence.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you look back, you know who would be really great to interview, but we can't because he's dead.
Oh, dang it.
Whenever the Great Awakening happened, if you look at guys who were coming out from that time, like George Whitefield and all these guys, they were looked at as being entertainers.
Really?
If you look at George Whitefield's, like, his style of preaching, he would detract a lot of people because he cared about, not that other people didn't care about what he was doing, but he was doing something so well and so creatively that it was different from what other people were doing, and people frowned upon that.
And they were bothered by it.
They were bothered by it.
Okay, I get what you're saying.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. I was like, George Whitefield, an entertainer. I'm like, what?
Because his style of preaching, he would use, like, he would be, you know, dramatic in his sermons, and
he was an orator.
Yeah, he was an orator, and it blew people's minds because they have never encountered anything like that. And really, I don't think our culture has changed that much either. If you look at today, if you look at somebody who comes in with a different album that they love, or a different, even a political view, the first response to that is to ignore it or criticize it,
or to demonize it.
Yeah,
right.
That's what we've all become cynics.
Yeah,
and me, myself included.
Oh yeah, gosh, totally myself. I'm definitely a cynic in that regard. Absolutely.
So what would I say to an upcoming worship leader? I would say, be a fan of music, love God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself, and pray. Pray, seriously. And really ask yourself the questions, why am I doing this?
Okay.
Constantly asking yourself that question. Because there were things I wanted whenever I was 5 years old that I'm so thankful that God didn't give me.
Mm-hmm.
There were things that I wanted when I was 15 years old that I'm so thankful that God didn't give me. And there were things that I wanted last year when I was 25 that God knew what he was doing.
And God had good reasons for saying no.
Yeah, and there's another guy who's really influenced me. He said something that always stuck with me. His name is J.R. Vassar.
Oh, I know J.R. Vassar.
He brought up a great point. Yeah, he's at one of the 829 conferences. And,
yeah, he's a great
he said,
guy.
If you're pursuing ministry, or if you're pursuing anything really, and you feel God has called you to do something, he goes, don't try to outreach God. Because literally, like, God has set the boundaries for what we're going to do. He knows how far we're going to influence. He knows how far we are going to go. Rest in what he's called us to today. Pray for tomorrow. Don't worry about tomorrow. He's already got that. So don't try to outreach what he already has for you.
That's pretty good.
And he said that, and it was just, it spoke to me in a really great place.
That's
crazy. It was exactly what I needed to hear at the time. So
that's good. I guess one more question before we wrap up here. Why does this even matter? Like, why does it even matter? Like why does this question even matter at all? Like, why does...
That's a great question.
Like, why spend the energy and the labor to talk about this particular aspect of our Sunday morning worship? Like,
that's great. And you know, whenever I saw this question on the outline, I was like, man, that's a great question. I don't know if I have the answer to that.
Well, if you don't, that's not a bad thing either.
Well, I didn't at first, but then I started reading.
That's not a bad plan of action.
And I have this quote here from, guess who? Tim Keller.
No way.
And he answers this question really great, in a greater way than I could ever have answered it. So, and he says this. He goes, when it comes to quality in our worship and quality in our services, he goes, the power of art draws people to behold it. Good art in its message enters the soul through the imagination and begins to appeal to the reason. For art makes ideas plausible. The quality of music and speech in worship will have a major impact on its evangelistic power. In many churches, the quality of music is mediocre or poor, but it does not disturb the faithful. Why? Their faith makes the words of the hymn or the song meaningful despite its artistic poor expression. Any further, they usually have a personal relationship with the music presenter. But any outsider who comes in who is not convinced of the truth or who does not have any relationship to the presenter will be bored or irritated by the poor offering. In other words, excellent aesthetics includes outsiders, while mediocre or poor aesthetics excludes. The low level of artistic quality in many churches guarantees that only insiders will be continuing to come. For the non-Christian, The attraction of good art will have a major part in drawing them in. And of course, yeah,
Dang.
way better than I could have ever explained that. But what he's saying that, and I'm sure this is one reason in many, but simply for the fact of being missional. I mean, like,
this ties into how we go about actually being in about the community for the sake of the gospel.
yes,
Like the music we play in the community.
yes, and just like our community groups are missional, so is our music.
Yeah.
So is our music.
And we want to have a good ethic when it comes to our mission, so might as well have good music too.
Yeah, and really, like, I constantly want to be a growing follower of Christ, a growing leader, a growing musician, a growing student, because I'm not yet who I am.
Amen.
Because God is still sanctifying me. I have not reached my home yet, which is Christ Jesus.
Amen.
I haven't reached that point yet. And with the ministry that God's put me in, and the people that God has put me over to serve, I constantly want to be pushing people to grow. To grow because why? Because foolishness and sin are right behind us.
Mm-hmm.
They really are, and I really hope that this doesn't discourage anybody. But like we should be. Was it Matt Chandler who said this? I think it was, but he said that it's okay. It's okay not to be okay, but it's not okay to stay that way.
I think that is a Chandler
Yeah,
quote.
and when it comes to music, and I'm like, well, that doesn't apply. Well, I think it does.
It does apply.
I think it does apply. Like, if we're playing the same songs with the same melodies, with the same whatever that they did in the 90s, not that that's wrong, but we should be looking forward. I think Christian culture should be on the forefront of creativity, the forefront of not just with music, but with art,
Everything?
with everything. Like, we should be the
What a
best
radical
at our jobs.
concept.
What a radical concept. Yeah, why? Because we are imaging a God who is restoring all things to himself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's our shtick. That's our shtick here. Is that we ought to be at the forefront of creativity because we have good reasons to create because we have the gospel, and that should inspire creativity in us that the world hasn't yet to be seen.
Yeah.
But
And not creating culture, but really being countercultural with what we do, with our music, with our jobs, where God has placed us. And what is being countercultural? It looks like loving and serving the Lord God with all of our heart, mind, soul, and strength, and loving our neighbors as ourselves. I really do think that it's not as simple as that, but that's the best answer I got right now.
well, I think that's a pretty solid answer, and I think that I'm pretty sure we'll have to revisit this subject later on down the road at some point. But we've been going pretty good. We're at about an hour and 12 at the moment.
Oh wow! Okay.
So let's wrap this down. Aaron, do you have any recos or disrecos?
I do. Yeah, I got some recos here.
All right, what's your recos?
If you are listening to this podcast, I'm guessing that you are a fan of podcasts.
I would hope you are.
Yeah. And one podcast that I've been sorry to recommend a podcast on a podcast, but
No, I've done it before.
Dan Carlin's Hardcore History.
Yes. Oh my gosh, Hardcore History is awesome.
I have been devouring these things. They're like 3 to 4 hours an episode.
They're long.
They're so
long.
good. Like, he puts you right in the middle of history, and it's fantastic. So I've been devouring that. So Dan Carlin's Hardcore History, and 2, a friend of mine and an old coworker who's now in one of the Carolinas, north or south, I can't remember. But his church, St. Peter's, they're an Anglican church, just put out a new Advent album. It's called Holy City Hymns Advent number 2.
Oh yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, Patrick,
Yes.
Megan Schlabs, they're out there, and
Yes.
they got a great team out there. They're doing great things for the kingdom of God.
Mm-hmm.
Really great. I love what's coming out of the Anglican movement right now.
There's some really solid stuff.
Very
in there right
good
now.
stuff. Very good Reformed, Christ-centered stuff, and it's just great.
It's an exciting place to be right now.
It is, yeah. So Holy City Hymns, Advent number 2. So check that out. It's great.
My reco this week, just to reco another podcast, is Serial. Okay. I listened, I was like, man, I've heard so much about this podcast, and I'm going to start listening to it. Like, not even kidding, like halfway through the first episode, like, I'm so sold. Like, I am so hooked into it. If you don't know what Serial is, it's this reporter / journalist who was asked to look at a really old case from like 15 years ago, just for the sake of looking at it. And as she looks at the case, she begins to notice a lot of crap in the case. And just decides that she wants to investigate this case on her own, and she interviews the guy who's in jail at the moment as a result of this case. She interviews friends and family and does all sorts of homework, and does actual interviews with them in each episode, and it's excellently produced. She is an outstanding narrator, very gripping, very, very easy to listen to. And it raises so many fascinating questions. It's better than any episode of NCIS or CIS, Law and Order. Better than any crime show I've ever seen, by far, not even close. And it's outstanding. Oh my gosh! If you're not listening to Serial, I don't know if I would tell you to stop listening to us and go listening to Serial. But if I were honest, you probably would be more entertained than if you did that. It's no, seriously, Serial. It's an outstanding podcast. And then the other reco that I have is we have actually put out a Advent album several years ago.
We did, yeah.
We've actually put out 2 albums. And they're both available on Noise Trade. I'm pretty sure both.
Noise Trade, Spotify, iTunes.
You just search Redeemer Christian Church, right?
Redeemer Hymnal.
Redeemer Hymnal. That's what it is.
Yeah, we have an Advent and a Lent album.
For free.
Yeah.
So if you're in the market for some free music and you're in the market for some good, free, scriptural, indie folk-ish, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I would agree.
Indie folkish hymns and worship songs. Redeemer Hymnal, some really good stuff. Normally, at this point in the episode, I take the time to kind of outline the gospel and why the gospel is the reason for Another Ascending Lark, and the reason why we do everything, the reason why I give so much of a crap about this subject is because of the gospel. But I think we've done a pretty good job in this episode making the gospel at the forefront of this episode, to where I don't need to really rehash that. I think Aaron has done a really good job hashing out the gospel and hashing out why it's important to the subject, so I'm not going to reiterate that again this time, just because Aaron has done a fantastic job on it. I thank you so much for coming on again, Aaron.
Thanks for having me on. This is fun.
Yeah,
this is not as nervous as I thought it would be.
Yeah, you were super nervous before, and I'm like, dude, this is fun. It's easy, and it's fun. It's worth it. But yeah, again, thank you so much for having you come on. We'll definitely have to have you on again here real soon, so you can share your insight on all sorts of other things. So I'm Austin.
And I'm Aaron.
And we will see you next week, and the week after that, and the week after that. At least I hope we will, because, holiday planning, this is the most logistically saturated time of the year.
Agreed.
Planning I'm gonna go see this person, I've got this Christmas party, I've got Christmas Eve services that we have to go work. Schedule that, we have to go work. And so we're not sure yet how we're gonna finish out the year, so just be patient with us. We definitely will have plenty of end of the year stuff this year, even though we have quite a bit of catching up to do still in this last month. We're definitely going to have a full end of the year set, and definitely look forward to that. Again, just contact info one last time. You can find us on Facebook at Another Ascending Lark, Twitter handles AALblog. Send us an email at anotherasscendinglark@gmail.com. Aaron, is there any way people can get in touch with you if they want to chat with you?
Aaron at redeemerchristianchurch.com. I believe it's .com.
And then your Twitter handle is?
At Aaron A. Reyes. AARONAREYES.
Cool. Yeah, so thanks for listening. Share the episode with friends and family, and we'd love to be able to have more people on the show, have more guests on, talking about other subjects. And if there's a subject you want to hear us talk about, you can always send us an email or something, and we'll be more than happy to talk about it. But whatever. We're an hour and 20 minutes. Time to call this a day. Thanks for listening. We will see you next week.
Thank you.